Sportsman.
Hello, sportsmen. Hey, remember when we were kids and we sat around in the summer and said, Mom, there's nothing to do? Well, this show is for you. You think there's nothing to do? We're going to show you how to fish Lake Erie for walleye. That's thing number one to do. Secondly, you could go out and try collecting antlers. The Mouskies are going to show us how that's done. Or you could finish up the closet reloading bench. Hey, there's lots to do. Sit back and learn. I'm Fred Trost, and you're watching The Practical Sportsman.
There we go.
Yes. The wind's blowing from the east, not the best for fishing, but this is typical charter walleye fishing style from now through the summer in Lake Erie. Planer boards, the most common way to run lures out to the sides of the boat. These waves look worse than they actually are on Captain Eddie McMillion's boat. Vicki Olmsted from Lajeunesse Bait and Tackle in Monroe hooked us up with Captain Eddie McMillion. His boat is called the Fish on 2, and even though this afternoon we had the lake to ourselves because of the bad weather, most boats stayed in port, on Lake Erie, the fishing is pretty darn consistent. Look, he's got a fish right there. Well, actually, we had two fish on, a very small walleye and mine. Not a keeper. It's not a keeper. It is a fish. Walleye have to be 15 inches in Lake Erie. This one didn't feel like it'd make the legal limit, partly because the boat had to keep moving so the lines wouldn't tangle in the wind and waves. Oh, it might be a keeper. It might be. What do you think? Pretty darn close. We'll put the measuring tape to it here. Inches. 16.5 inches! A keeper. A tasty keeper. Yep. Put it right in the ice chest? Okay, this is an oversized ice chest.
Planer boards have a way of keeping the lures away from the boat. Being that Lake Erie, the water is beginning to get a lot clearer. The fish seem to sense the movement of the boat, and by having the planer boards, it's allow us to get the lures further away from the boat.
Do you catch most of your fish on planer boards?
The biggest majority of the fish come off the boards. The larger fish come off the dipsy divers and the downriggers.
And why do you suppose that is?
The bigger ones on the bottom.
Okay, so the planer boards have the lures out to the side, but they're not as deep, and the downriggers and dipsy divers put them deeper, but right behind the boat.
That's correct.
And when you talk big ones, what's the biggest one you've taken this year?
We took a 7.5 pounder 3 weeks ago. Last week Thursday, we took a 6.5 pound in the afternoon, and then in the evening we took a 4 pound 11 ounce walleye. Rather nice fish.
Second keeper, you got another one there? Go, came right off. Well, that's a keeper for sure. Yes, tasty, tasty. As usual, I caught the small ones. Cameraman John Ford caught the biggest. John, I need to hold on to you.
How you doing? You getting me okay?
I can't. I'm turning the camera on and off, and I can't hardly see anything through the viewfinder.
Oh, he's gone.
Is he?
Just kidding.
It doesn't matter, Johnny. We're not getting any of these.
Yeah, this is a real good one here.
Anybody thinks this camera work is easy has another thing coming.
That's right. You know, he's coming at the boat here a little bit.
The western waters of Lake Erie get rough, and the wind can whip it up fast, but western Lake Erie generally doesn't have the big swells like you find on eastern Lake Michigan.
Yeah, here we go. It's right up here.
Here we go.
There we go.
Yes.
All right.
Well, this is a good walleye for July, but in April, especially the next few weeks, this would be small. Look at that. How about a little round of applause? Round of applause for Johnny. Yes. You finally got it.
Well, I hope you got it.
Well, as I said, this was late July, Captain Eddie McMillion's boat, the Fish on 2, a day when the wind shifted from the east, but it didn't matter, we caught walleye. Now this is the next morning. During the night, the wind had shifted to the north. It was colder. Conditions like this usually screw up the fishing. Our captain challenging the Lake Erie on this day was Ron Levitan. who had to find the fish again. When the wind shifts like it did, the fish move. So Captain Ron was ready with an arsenal of lures, planer boards, and downriggers. There was only one way we were going to find walleye, and that was to experiment.
So you run the spoon straight back off the back?
Right, we're running the spoons on the downrigger, and we're running about a 30-foot lead on them. And we're kind of, the fish have split up now. They're not congregated in the top 8 feet. We've got fish suspended in 8 to 10. We've got fish at a 14-foot range, and we also got fish down at right at the bottom at 20, 22 foot. So we're going to try to cover all areas and find out where the most active fish are.
When you're the first boat on the water after a major weather change like this, you often have to experiment with everything you've got to find where those active fish are and what they're hungry for. Now, that's the practical reason for owning a variety of tackle and equipment. This big-lipped body bait wiggles and dives deep. Walleye can key in on the sound and to some degree the color. And on this day, it produced.
Oh, it's shaking its head.
Okay, you want to net it. I mean, you got to justify your position here.
All right.
So you net it just before I get it in the boat, okay?
Sounds good. Sounds good.
All righty, keeper.
Yeah, not bad. Let me get these pliers in here.
Well, frankly, I prefer to catch the smaller walleye, ones about, 20 inches or so. Those are the best to eat, the best in the frying pan. The bigger ones, well, they're more fun to catch, but they're not as tasty. And that is what you call the walleye fisherman's dilemma. A long-handled net is essential if you like to catch fish to eat, because most fish are lost right behind the boat. That's big fish or small fish. Now, Vicki Olmsted caught a few, so did Doug Tabor and John Ford. Then it came around to my turn again.
Another one?
Yeah.
Holy moly.
Wow, this is nice fish, man.
Oh, well, I want it then. It's my
There
turn.
you go. Yeah,
It's my, hold on. You take the, I
There you
got
go.
this fish.
Yeah, nice.
Oh, this is. Oh, yes. Does this have a dipsy diver on it?
No, no. Nice fish.
Good fish.
Any way you can get this out of my way here?
Yeah, sure.
That's Doug's fault there. No, this is the good one. Oh, this is a world of difference compared to the last one. Ooh, 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 ooh.
You like that, huh?
Yes, I like this.
It's a pretty steady action here. This is
Steady, it's been non-stop. Out bang, bang, bang. This is great.
Smaller fish tend to skip across the surface when you reel them in, but the bigger ones don't. They swim back and forth. They put up a battle. Like I said, this was taped in late July. Fishing like this in Lake Erie is available most of the summer, but the big ones, and I mean a lot bigger than this, are caught early.
Yes.
Now, you can find lots of charter captains in Monroe, Bowles Harbor, Luna Pier. Captain Eddie McMillion's boat is the Fish on 2. Captain Ron Levitan's boat is called Passin' Time. Both of these captains showed us they can put fish in the box during weather conditions that are generally bad for the average guy. That's the advantage of hiring a charter captain to fish places you're not familiar with. They have more equipment, larger boats, and a lot more everyday experience than most anglers. Oh, sure, fish are cheaper at the fish market. But what's more fun, shopping or fishing? Tough decision, huh?
Okay, so you're doing the conventional way.
You got it that way before?
Well, with a regular knife. So you go the other side, down to the backbone. I'll tell you what, Captain, that's the best job I've seen with an electric knife.
You like that, huh?
I do. Now, what do you do with the rib bones? Do you take them out with the electric?
We'll take them out.
But not with the electric knife?
Yes, sir.
Oh, you will? Okay. Look at that. Now that's impressive.
Do you sharpen those blades on that?
These are standard blades. there's a way you can sharpen them.
Okay, hold on. Let's see that fillet there. That
Like
is
that?
a good walleye fillet done with electric knife. And let me also fish this out, because this is how I judge a fillet job.
Check it out.
That is, I give that an A. Look at that. You got the meat right along the backbone. There's virtually none left there, and of course none on the skin. I would say, good job, Captain.
Good.
Home video time. Doug Begos from Gregory captured some unusual late February footage of white-tailed deer. Now, 2 bucks fighting isn't terribly unusual in November, but a little odd at that time of year. These 2 bucks are working with 1 antler each. But that's not the good part. In comes a bigger buck with both his antlers. It's at least an 11 point. One buck tells his buddy, "Hey, Melvin, Bubba has both antlers. You only have 1. 1? I can't fight him with 1. And that's the day in the life of a buck in late February. Now, a buck like this one, and I could count 11 good points on him, he's a big breeding buck, and he'll keep his antlers as long as he's actively breeding, which could be as late as the 1st of March. Probably the only does he'll find that are coming into heat are yearlings, those that were born last spring. And if they mate now, which they sometimes do, their fawns will be born late in the summer, and they probably won't survive. But that's a part of nature nonetheless. Everything doesn't always happen on time. If you want to get some exciting videotape like this, grab your camcorder like Doug Begos did, go sit in a tree stand in deer country. Even in the farm country, you'll find deer congregating together, big groups. Find 10, 20, maybe even 30 deer at a time. With the leaves off the trees and snow on the ground, visibility is perfect. The breeze will probably keep your scent above the deer, especially since the air is frigid and your body is warm, so any odor from you will rise. So unless you move around or make noise, the deer won't know you're there. About half the bucks in this group that Doug was taping were 1-antlered bucks. Sometime within the past few days, or could be even the past few hours, they lost 1 antler. It happens every year at that time. Both antlers drop off within a few days of each other, usually, but there's a short period of time when each buck will only be carrying half of his original set. Now, for some, it must turn their world on edge. Oh, I guess that's Doug Begos on edge behind the camera. It's tough to cover all the angles when there are so many deer under you at one time. Now, Doug has been rolling for 2.5 minutes straight, but we thank him for sending us this unusual footage of farm country bucks in the winter. I also want to thank Larry and Cindy Mowski, who now live up in the UP near Muskong Bay, for sending us this home video that they made to show us how they find antlers that bucks drop. This has turned into one of their favorite hobbies.
Cindy sees something here. Let's see if we can find it. Where is it? Ahead of you?
Yeah, it's right here in the soil stuff.
Larry and Cindy got into collecting shed antlers a few years ago, and now it's something they look forward to every winter.
Hey, this looks like a real nice one. It's 5 within a 10. Good spot. They like laying at the base of the trees because although you may think it's cold, the tree gives off a certain amount of heat, and they do like to lay next to them. And most of the time you will find your antlers in bedding or feeding areas, and they've been in here. There's a bed there, here, and looks like 2 behind me. There may be even some more under that cedar over there.
Hey, Cindy, a lot of people, I don't think even they realize that deer and moose and elk all native here in Michigan.
In the deer family, yeah, they all lose their antlers every year.
See, let's look at the base of that a bit. Is that a pretty fresh dropping?
Yeah, there's still a little blood around the side. You'd have to get real close up on it to see it. But it has just dropped recently. I would say, since there's not a lot of snow on top of it, that it was in the last couple of days because we haven't had any snow.
What time of year do you think is the best time to start looking for sheds?
I think it depends on your location. Up north, they may drop earlier because winter will set in faster. Down here, they may hold them a little bit longer And it also depends on the buck-to-doe ratio, because if the does aren't bred, if there's too many does, then the bucks won't drop their antlers, because the hormone levels of the testosterone is still up there. If they're still coming into heat, then they'll keep their antlers.
What time of year? What's the date today?
Today's the 2nd of February, I believe.
Yeah, that's what it is.
And
That looks like it came off just within the last couple days.
yeah, last couple.
This is the time of year when you'll start seeing antlers that the bucks have shed. The mouskies say most of them will fall onto the ground like this, with the tines standing up. Many will be in the bedding areas, which are easy to spot. The snow will be melted where they lie down, and where you find one bed, you'll usually find a number of others. Be sure to check out the thickets. Follow deer trails through tangles and brush. This is one area the mouskies say is very productive for finding shed antlers. Now, spotting these tines takes some practice. Keep your eyes open everywhere, even ditches or wet areas. Could you have spotted this one as an antler? The buck lost it in an open area, and it's been in the water a little while. The ditch had been frozen, the antler is getting covered with algae, and rodents have been chewing on the ends of the tines. But even an antler in this condition, hey, that's a trophy for a collector.
This one here, you can see the difference on how it's worn, how it's been sitting in the woods. There's mold on it, there's mildew. It's starting to age. Also, if you look at the difference in the color of the antler, this one here is a fresh shed. See how dark it is?
Later in the spring, these antlers will become bleached by the sun. The best quality antlers are found in late winter, fresh from the deer. Thanks to Larry and Cindy Mowski and their home video, you now have some tips on collecting shed antlers from whitetail bucks. They grow new antlers each year, and as soon as the weather breaks this spring, the bucks will start growing those unusual bones from the tops of their heads. Now, if you see bucks in early February with one antler, you'll know there's some nice racks sitting around in the woods, and it's antler collecting time. Do you know what it's like to be an antler sitting on the ground having people looking for you? Well, it's like being a photographer sitting on the ground with deer looking at you. This is how hard you have to look for antlers. You just know they're there someplace if you could just see them. So what can you do with antlers you find in the woods? Well, if you get a pair of them, you can make rattling antlers for hunting in the fall. You could take some of the bigger handles, put them on a big knife like this. This big antler comes from an elk, and of course they lose their antlers, and if you're lucky you could find one of those in the woods up north. Here's a small antler from a small buck on a small knife. Of course you can replace handles yourself like that. That's pretty neat. Dave and Linda Fleming from Union City make muzzle loading equipment. This is a ball starter with the handle being a piece of antler, shed antler, some ornate engraving on the end. So you can see there is a practical side to antler collecting. Matt Radzalowski framed up our Sportsman's Workbench last week. This week he added the shelves, 3/4-inch pine board, 6 inches wide. They rest on quarter round for supports. We'll store lead bullets and boxes of shotgun shells on these shelves, so we don't want them to bow in the middle under the weight. We just put a few shelves up to start. We'll add more later. On the model, Matt figured the workbench top would be 3/4-inch plywood, which he put on with an extension on each side for the reloading presses. We want to load metallic cartridges on the right-hand side of our workbench, and this is a metallic cartridge reloader. You reload one shell at a time, so it's actually a minimum of equipment, but you need a good solid bench. Now, around the edge of this, Matt has 2x4s on end, and because this has a moving part to it down here, this would dig into the 2x4. So Matty had to notch that out, and we set the reloader right in there so it fits and it works, and we anchor it down with a couple of washers and wing nuts. And we're set up now on the right-hand side of our workbench to reload metallic cartridges. The shot shell side is a little more complex. The progressive reloader is larger with more moving parts, so Matt cut a few extra holes in the top so we could customize this operation. That's the beauty of making a workbench like this. Now we can set the shot shell reloader on the left-hand side, and Matt put those bolts in so they fit exactly. We anchor this down with, again, with wing nuts real quick so we can take this off if we want to move it. Now, you might wonder what this hole back here is for. Well, in looking at John DePoit's workbench, we use this as a substitute for his around-the-corner shell chute. Now, that extension on the shell chute, what's that made out of?
Just a piece of aluminum I had.
Did you rivet it to there?
Yeah, it's riveted to this shell chute here because it's not made long enough.
Because you wanted to turn the corner.
I wanted to turn the corner and drop into a bucket.
I like John DePoit's method of dropping the loaded shells into a bucket. Now, one thing we're doing here is we're putting some fabric in the bottom of the bucket to deaden the sound. But my shot shell reloader here is different than John's was. John's had the shell chute coming off the front and he wrapped it around. This one has the shell chute going off the back, and this was a little longer. So what Matt and I decided to do was to cut the shell chute off, make it a little bit shorter, put a hole in our workbench top, take some PVC pipe to make a tube, and here's how it works. We drop the shells right through the top of the workbench and into the bucket. Slick, huh? There they are, collecting in the bottom. And we have some reasons for that we're going to show you on next week's show. There's another procedure that John did. When you take the primers out of the shell, like this, the machine pushes the primer through and drops it into a tray. There's the primer that came out. Now, the problem with this tray is that you can get primers piled up and it'll actually interfere with the operation of the machine if they get too high and you're not paying attention. So what John did, very ingenious, he ran a copper tube through the bottom of his workbench underneath his reloader where the primers fall, and then he ran that down to the floor into a milk jug. So he collects all his primers down there. I thought that is a cool idea because you never have to worry about them stacking up. But we wanted to do that same type of thing, a little more simple. Matty drilled a hole through the top of the workbench, right under where the primers fall. We found that this cardboard box that we bought some screws in fits really well underneath here. And this, theoretically, could hold thousands of primers. Let's see if we can hear it drop into the box. There we go. Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. I can stack up thousands of primers in there and not worry about them jamming the machine. Well, next week, we're going to put the finishing touches on this workbench, get things into operation. Matt has some roughs on here to anchor to the siding. We're going to build a little gun rack in here. We got lots of things to do. You're going to see how this finishes off, so be sure to join us for that. It's going to be pretty darn cool. Be able to reload shells.
Whoa. Give, shake. Good boy. Okay, that.